First of all, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners upon the land of which I stand and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm here today to talk specifically about green hydrogen and whether it's hype or hope in the Asia Pacific, but I'll also cover a few other things and touch on some of the bigger, bolder opportunities across this part of the world, as Tim sort of mentioned before. Hopefully this will work. There we go. I'm here representing the Smart Energy Council, which is a peak industry body for all things non-fossil fuels, wind, solar, but the entire ecosystem, and bringing together all the industry parts to that. And Zero Carbon Hydrogen Australia, which is a division focused specifically on hydrogen made from renewable sources, not from fossil fuels. That's the big point of difference. I'm also affiliated with Monash University and the Monash Energy Institute, which do some fantastic research and work in this particular area. Zero carbon hydrogen. There's a lot of talk about it, and you almost go through a week and there's another press release or a statement by a CEO. So what I'm going to try to do in this next couple of minutes is sort the wheat from the chaff, or work out what is real and what is not. My first sort of comment, going back to something Jeff mentioned before, was his reason for setting up SIM-PAC was because his son was coming home and saying the world is on fire. And that's the reason that I'm here today too. And the importance of that is, if we look at what the global climate budget left is to keep global warming as close as possible to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, we've got about 5 years of global budget left. So quite simply, we don't have time to wait for a pipe dream of nuclear power for places like Australia. Elsewhere around the world, it's a different story, to be able to drop our emissions drastically. We have to get to levels in the order of 75% reduction in emissions by 2035. So what that means is we need to electrify everything we can possibly do it and use solar and other renewable energy, wind, to power those machines. And the thing which is a fantastic part of the story is China has actually dropped the cost of solar down to drastically low levels. And if any business or any home is not putting solar on their roof and their land as much as they possibly can, they're nuts, really. And we're going to see the same thing with batteries too, which has already started to occur. So we do that, but there's stuff that we can't electrify very easily, and we need to have other uses as well, which is where green hydrogen comes in. Basically for the things we can't electrify, and for things such as those industrial chemicals, for that green iron, that green ammonia, for the aviation fuels, likely the maritime sort of fuels, shipping, we're likely to be using green hydrogen in some form or else nature. These are some of the players which are actually making progress, so it's more than hype. There's still a way to go, and as Tim mentioned, we've got a long way to go still. I think the biggest electrolyser which is in the country is about 1.25 kilowatts, although Yara, who's there, has got a 10 megawatt plant coming in for green ammonia. We've got Fortescue, which is actually now building electrolysers at this plant in Gladstone. So it's actually there and occurring. We've got the South Australian Government, who are, I would say, is the leading state in this area, actually putting 500, 600 million of government funds on the table to build a 250 megawatt green hydrogen plant. They are getting serious, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. Finally, a hat tip to CQH2, which is the Central Queensland Hydrogen Project, which is a consortium, as Tim was mentioning, of companies from Japan, from Korea, as well as Australian companies, Stanwell. And they've also got a partnership with Redflow, I think, coming in the ways as well. The other ones which I just want to mention a shout out to is Frontier Energy, which is doing some terrific work in Bristol Springs, south of Perth, which will be connected to the grid in terms of its actual plant, and CWP Global, that is really looking at the Asia Pacific Renewable Energy Hub, which is again talking in gigawatt size factories and plants. What's the key, and where do I think is the real opportunities? Green iron, green steel, particularly green iron, actually, rather than green steel. This is some leading edge work, actually won the Eureka Prize for its research, I think it was last year, by Monash as well as Geoscience Australia, really mapping all the various minerals, but in particular in this area was looking at the magnetite resources across the country, but also looking at where that's close to where we've already got steel manufacturing plants. Because the opportunity there, we've got a workforce, we've got infrastructure, we've got ports that enable the transition to occur. You'll notice South Australia looks pretty good in here, the Pilbara, and also Gladstone also comes up pretty well, trumps in this area. This is where we think the big opportunity is, but we're going to need bigger drivers to make it happen. Otherwise, we're going to spend the next 10 years and we'll be back here having a similar conversation. Now, the work the government's done, the federal government now I'm talking about, in terms of its Hydrogen Head Start program, which is $2 billion, which we're hoping to see announced most likely early next year now. And there's a number of companies I've talked about which are making bids for that particular fund, is a good start, but it's a down payment. We need to do tenfold, 100-fold of that sort of level of investment to make this industry grow. The Future Made in Australia initiative, which passed 4/5 of the bills in the last couple of days, last week, is a fantastic initiative which will invest $23 billion in terms of tax production credits and other incentives in things like green hydrogen, critical minerals processing and those things. Huge opportunities, and it shows we're serious. We've got to do more. We want to see more things like the Hydrogen Head Start, more tax credits focused on things like green iron and green ammonia. Why is it that I talk about green hydrogen, not blue hydrogen? First of all, I think that carbon capture and storage has been a con for many years. We've literally invested $1 billion, more than $1 billion of taxpayer funds in this research technology over the past 20 years. And I think we've produced about 1 kilogram of hydrogen which could be stored underground. So this idea that we're going to take brown coal or fossil gas and turn it into hydrogen, collect all the CO2, pipe it or take it maybe 70 miles to the coast and then pump it underground and keep it there, versus making it from the cheapest sources of energy in the world, solar and wind, to me is just a pipe dream. Also, the problem with blue hydrogen is you're still using fossil gas or fossil fuels. And as the Ukraine crisis showed us, that when that happened, it means the hydrogen still gets a hit. So the ammonia, which is used to make fertiliser and explosives, still gets a price kicker as part of using fossil hydrogen. If you're using green hydrogen, you avoid this problem. So particularly in places like India or China or those places, if you're making your ammonia, your fertilisers using green, you manage to decouple yourself from that fossil fuel and those price shocks. The Quad dialogue, which has taken an interesting turn with the election of Trump, but nevertheless, I see this as critically important as a way to give us the ability to diversify our supply chains. So I'm very much with Tim on the importance of partnering with China, but I'm also very much of the view we need to have a diversification of supply chains. COVID taught us one thing, if I'm nothing else, the importance of having diversified supply chains and some ability to manufacture your own fuels and energy sources here on site. This is an industry dialogue which we set up with obviously the countries which we're talking about there, but it's really trying to bring industry together, because that's where the real partnerships are made. That's where we see the opportunities realised. So governments can have lots of talks and make lots of pronouncements, but until we get industry to industry working together, then we're not going to see this through. And this was an example of this. Was in Delhi on the 1st of July this year, I think. Lastly, before I finish up, I want to introduce a new initiative which Minister Bowen announced and launched at the Baku COP29 event just a little while, which is a Renewable Energy Council Asia Pacific. Now, the reason for this being established is because the Asia Pacific is where the world is going to change. It is going to be the hugest, the biggest transfer of wealth we've seen and the opportunity to decarbonise that we've ever seen. It includes China and Asia and India and other places. It's a third of the globe. However, there's these huge opportunities, but there's not much coordination with what the non-government organisations are doing, the governments are doing, the business, the active groups, etc. Everyone's sort of bumping into each other. It's not very well coordinated, and we don't have time to mess that around. So this is really about joining together, providing the connections so that we have the World Bank funding with the companies that are actually doing the stuff on the ground that we need to occur and those things. And we have got the International Solar Alliance working with the Green Hydrogen Organisation in terms of those sort of opportunities. Thank you, and I'll just leave with a plug of my new book, which is called A Better Australia, with John Brumby, who is the Premier of Victoria, and Stuart Kells. Be looking forward to answering any questions.